Hello, hi everyone. So today we are going to cover some important question with respect to HCL interview for automation testing. So this video is going to be very interesting because I have taken these question from 5 to 7 candidate who just gone through the HCL interview. So they communicated me or I requested question with me so that I can at least give a insight about what all interview question asked in SCL. So let's get started. So the first question is, so I have divided these questions into two parts. So 25 question in one part and 25 in the second, because if I will consider all those 50 question in one part, then the video is going to be very lengthy. So to making it interesting, I thought to put only 25 questions. So let's get started. Somehow I have put some relevant answer with respect to these questions. So questions are, explain the framework you are using. I haven't put the basic question like tell me about yourself, your roles and responsibility. That you guys know, like I mean, this is very basic thing that you can face in each and every interview. Okay, so we are here to cover the important questions. You will see some very important question. I mean, with respect to the interview. So the questions are, explain the framework you are using. So obviously you can explain if you are a fresher. So the experience range of those candidates are 3 to 10 years. So you can think about it like what all interview question can be asked within this experience range. So when I say explain the framework you are using, you can explain the framework that related to data driven, keyword driven and hybrid driven. But you have to be very specific. If you haven't used keyword driven, then do not say that, because it will give a negative impression. Next question, what is data driven framework? Obviously, if you are saying that you are using data driven framework and you are using Java client, TestNG and page object model as a design pattern, so you should be ready for the next question with respect to these articles. So what is data driven framework? One of the most well like automation framework available to is data driven framework. Automation testing is data driven means data is prepared in an Excel spreadsheet and then loaded into the automation tool. So when we use test data as Excel, when we read some data from Excel, when we write some data, then we use, then such type of setting is called data driven. And as we are working with other component, then it is already a framework. Next is where the test data will be stored in this framework. This is very important because here interviewer want to see like where you put you, I mean where you guys used to put your data. Sometimes you, I mean I have seen that people used to put test data in a class, sometimes in a property file, or sometimes they used to create a different package where they can put their relevant data. Let's take the example, if you are, I mean if your framework is uh, filling forms, or you have a page where you can put all the relevant detail of, or you used to fill all the relevant detail of a candidate or of a student, then obviously you must need a data set. Either you can create a excel sheet where you can put all those relevant data row wise, or you have some specific thing, then you can create the different excel file or different xml file, json file for that. So this is how people used to use, we used to create the test data within the resource folder, and uh, this is how they manage the test data. Next is component of frameworks. So in this question, the selenium related component, what all the component in selenium that we have seen so far, or I mean selenium IDE, RC and WebDriver, and yes, RC is already there. Next is count how many links are there in the form. This is a programming question of Selenium where you need to find the number of links. As we all know, if we use tag by a driver dot find element by dot tag name is a, then it will give us everything, all the links on the pages. But we need to check whether the links are working fine or not. That might be the next question, how to decide that whether the this link is working fine or not. So once you get all the link by using driver.find elements, that will return the list of web element, and you can count the size of the that list. This is how you can print the size. Next is different type of locator. Which locator is your preference and why? Obvious, this is very obvious question, as we used to have a multiple locator like id, name, class, tag name, parcel, text or text, xpath, css, and partial link text and other. But what, why we are using those things? So that is, I mean, that you need to prepare for answering it. Next question is, how are you presenting your report to the client? So when we execute our test cases, a report used to generate, and how you share that report to your manager, to your stakeholder, or your client. Suppose you have hundreds or 200 test cases of application, and you need to share those 200 test cases report to your client. What all you have built in your framework, so that report can be automatically sent, or report format, how you decided? So this question related to which report mechanism, which reporting tool you are using, which reporting library you are using, and why. Next is how to handle listener in TestNG. Give me three listener. So if you, this question related to listener, what are listeners? We have listeners are interface. You should be ready with the top three or four listener like I retry, I report, I there are other listeners too, so you can name all those listener and the uses of that, like I retry is to retry the test. But make sure, if you are saying I use I retry listener, but where you should know where you have used that listener, or what are the implementation. If somebody asks you to implement this listener in the framework, then how you can implement that. Next is, which is the process that you use to report the automation in your organization. So this is again similar to the question number 8, where we know that this is the reporting mechanism we are using, but how you report it, is there any specific format, or you just report it, and what all things you put in that report, like these are the number of test cases, this percentage of test cases pass and this percentage of test case failure region, and something like that. Something like elaborated report or descriptive report, which by checking the report, anyone can understand what is happening in automation. Next is how to handle authentication window. Very good question. I would suggest you to try it, like whenever there is a authentication pop up, how you guys used to handle it through automation. Next is how to handle multiple windows. As we know, get window handles, by using this we'll get all the windows appeared on the screen. Once we get all these window, we can switch between the window, or we can switch to the specific window. Once we are done our verification task on a specific window, we can come back to our parent window. So this is pretty basic, and usually people interested in, or interview interested in these iframe and window, sometimes in lr too, but iframe and window you should must know. Next is challenge phase in your automation project. How you overcome those? Yes, when you have 5 plus of experience, you can expect this question from the interviewer. Interviewer want from you that what all challenges you face while automation, because he want to see, I mean what type of, or how much harder automation you have done, how complex is your automation framework which used to deal with these failures or runtime or compile time failure. So sometimes something like pop-up windows could be your window pop-up or your alert box or something like that, but windows pop-up is little bit critical than the alert box. Identifying dynamic element save us from failing our script at runtime. Timeout or sync issue. Timeout or sync issue is very basic or very important, or very, this is the first problem that we face while doing automation. Sometimes you are waiting, your automation script is waiting for the browser, but due to network latency or slow internet, your browser is not loading. What will happen? Your script will start failing because you have already put some implicit or explicit wait in there. So in this case, you can, what are the, how you overcome from this problem, you should know limited reporting, because selenium itself cannot provide the reporting mechanism. That's why we use testng has its own limitation, and the format that it is using for reporting, it is very basic, but it is better than the selenium itself provide, or whether we are using JUnit. So that's why we use extend report, LEO report. So next thing is limited captcha handling. Obviously selenium cannot handle, or mm, we do not have anything in selenium which can handle captcha or barcode or something like that. In upcoming days you can see visual testing is come into the picture, so that's why some other player like playwright or cypress, and they are coming, people are start using them just to enhance the visual testing, or just to increase the dependency on visual testing. So next question is how to handle complicated mouse interaction. Obviously, we use actions class to use drag and drop, right click, context click, scroll down, or you can say moving to the element or something like that we can do. What type of framework does your company use? Again, the repeated, the question we have already covered. Explain about your framework architecture. Yes, it is regarding the component that we are using in framework. So you can explain where in your framework did you store every type of XPath. So it means to say like, where is your page or object repository? Have you created a separate package for that, or you have just put the XPath within the page? So next is what is hub and node. This in this question, the interviewer is asking about Selenium Grid. What is hub? Have you used Selenium Grid? If yes, then you should know the answer of that. What is hub? How we can start the hub and execute, or how we can start the node. Like node could be your browser thing, like Chrome browser or Firefox browser. So once hub is ready, you can execute your test case on nodes. Next is how do you run your test using a framework. So you need to, there are multiple ways where we can execute our test cases. Like we can execute it through the testng suite, we can execute through the class, we can execute through the test case, we can execute through the command prompt using the maven command, and all those things. Even we can execute, we can create some executable jar, we can execute it through Jenkins. There are multiple ways we can use. Next is write the XPath. So they might ask you to write some XPath, maybe some web table related thing. You need to find the dynamic XPath related to web table. How to handle alert using WebDriver. Previously we have covered regarding the window. Right now it is alert. You can expect, obviously it is very obvious that you can expect from the iframe 2. Next is, how can two radio button on a page with the same id be differentiated? Obviously this time we need to find the x path. You need to give a concrete answer, like, I mean, if the ids of both the elements are same, then I will be traversing to the parent and then we can index the thing and something like that. You can answer. How should an XPath be written for dynamic web pages like Flipkart, Facebook? Obviously, creating XPath for dynamic pages is an art, because it will save our script while failing. So that's why people recommend to use dynamic XPath. This time he can ask you to share your screen and start creating the XPath for anything on Facebook or Flipkart. Next question is, how do you utilize JUnit in project? This time, I mean, previously when developer used a developer used to create the unit test cases, they use JUnit for the same. And even as a QA, we were using JUnit, but right now we are using TestNG. So you can explain like we are using TestNG. So he can ask you like, what are the advantages of TestNG over JUnit? Next question is, TestNG, how do you use in project? What are the dependency that you are using? Which is the current version of TestNG? How TestNG use for executing our test cases? How you create the TestNG.xml? What is the advantages of TestNG over JUnit? So there are multiple advantages. Something like parameterization, data provider we can use. We can use, I mean, within the at the rate test annotation, we can put invocation count, we can retry it, we can provide the description, we can use the depends on method, depends on group, we can even grouping the test cases. So there are multiple things that you can do using TestNG. TestNG has its, I mean, has its own mechanism of showing the report for fail or pass test case. Using TestNG, we can rerun our failed test cases. So these all things you can answer. So this is all about the HCL interview question for automation testing part 1. In coming days or 2 3 days, I will be publishing the second part. You can find this document, copy and paste it at your end, start solving those problem. Like, I'll share the path of this, and you can just save these types of question, and you can also go through the other question. The very important thing is like client and manager level interview question. So you can refer this page where you will find that if you are supposed to work in a service based company, or you are working service based company, or you have cleared the service based company, then we used to have a client or manager level round. So what all questions they used to ask in that round, you can refer that, like how you can answer that. I have even put the answer with respect to those questions, so you can check that and get the answer. Yeah, so this is all about it. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.